Welcome to the Father Focus podcast.
Father Focus. Check.
Why are we talking about this? Why does it matter?
So shaping your kids into powerful people.
Bro, let that brother fly. Check. All right, let's go.
You ready?
All right, let's go. I was messing.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Father Focus podcast. Wherever you are right now, I hope you are ready because I think this is going to be a phenomenal episode. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us for a few minutes, so let's jump in. Today, what I want to talk about is 5 things every dad should know. We kind of formulate often like, okay, if we were to break it down for a new dad who's kind of trying to figure out things from the beginning, like what are the highlights? What are the 10 commandments, the 5 best things he should know right at the beginning? So we kind of came up with our top list, greatest 5 hits that we should talk about. So I'm going to kind of run through these and then we're going to break them down one by one. So if you have a pen and paper, you're recording this, here are 5 things we think every dad should know and constant remind them. So here they are. The first one is this: your example matters most. Your example matters most. Number 2, you can't accidentally have a great family. Doesn't come accidentally, comes intentionally. Number 3, put your family first. Number 4, the goal isn't control, it's relationship. And the last one, your voice becomes your kid's inner voice. So let's talk about this. 5 things every dad should know. Number 1, your example matters most. What pops in your head when you guys hear that?
I think about the old saying people used to say, do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
That used to be an old kind of a cliche thing people would say. And it not only, it's just flat out, it's wrong, right? Our example matters most to our kids. We're the first, as it relates to the Father, we're the first thing that they see, Father God.
You saying that's wrong?
What's wrong?
You just do what I do, say, not what I do. Because that's actually how I lead.
Is that how you lead? I think it's wrong.
Do it now.
Because I said so.
I'm sorry.
Well, that's awkward.
Yeah. So that used to be this whole, I've heard it before, like, I better not, a dad's doing something and he would tell his son, or I better not catch you doing this.
Yeah.
Smoking a cigarette.
Yeah, ever. Or like,
getting drunk out of your mind.
And then the son's like.
Cursing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That child, that son, that daughter is like, what? Like, it sends mixed signals. Like, what is that child supposed to do?
Yeah.
So we have to prioritize, what are we building with intentionality? What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I thought about, as you're saying, you can't accidentally have a great family. I mean, you might have accidentally became a father. You might have accidentally or became a dad. Like some people weren't expecting to be a dad or a father, but you can't accidentally be a great father or have a great family. So no matter how you started and how it began, what Nathan is saying and we agree with is that you can't be great. You can't have a great family accidentally. You must intentionally sow, because there is a current in our culture.
Yeah.
There are currents in our culture that will carry your family places that you may not want to go.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's like getting in a raft and saying, hey, I want to go to Italy, but I'm going to accidentally float there. I mean,
it's probably not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. So you have to set a course, Nathan, which is so good. You got to have a vision of where you want to go, and then what are the steps it takes for me to get there.
Yeah.
Right. What is the vision for your family?
Right.
Right. Because what version are you wanting to see?
Yeah.
There's a quote. Y'all are gonna have to help me. Okay, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there.
Right. Yeah.
Which is really, the way I take that at times is like, you're going to end up in some arbitrary place. Again, the 5 things every dad should know. You're not going to have a great family. Like, you can have a family, again, Jermaine, accidentally. You'll stumble upon things, but like, what do you want to see in the culture of your home? Like, and so for me, one of the things that I value, especially with 5 kids, is I want them to be friends. So I'm intentionally about creating a space and a place for them to play together, us to vacation together, be in the same rooms, and they enjoy each other. They enjoy each other. Now, don't get me wrong; they still will butt heads, and I have, just because they're all individuals and trying to. I have, honestly, right now I have 5 kids. My youngest is 3. The other 4, they're leaders, and they all want to be in charge. So they butt heads at times, and I'm okay with that. But we're progressing. As a family to a particular kind of family. of harmony, of peace, and I want
Right.
them to be lifelong friends. I know stories of people who they don't talk to their siblings, and so I'm trying to, one thing.
That's
I
great.
know I'm not getting that. It's not just gonna accidentally happen.
Right.
I want them, like I tell my son, I'm like, Judah, since he was young, like, hey, I want you to protect your sisters. I want you to always watch them. And teachers will tell me, they're like, when they're in lines and they're walking past each other, Judah will always wave to his sister. He'll hug
That's
the
great.
little ones. He'll, and so again, I feel like in some sense I'm getting a pat on the back when I hear those stories.
Yeah,
like,
that's
okay.
awesome. Yeah.
But that's part of my intentionality.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's why we talk often about the importance of creating family values. Like when you break down the culture of your home, what are things you want people to see without you having to tell them that they're there?
Yeah.
And-
Go ahead.
What do you
No,
want
no,
heard?
go.
That's good. What do
Yeah.
you want them to say
about your family?
about your family to you? What do you want to hear? And go
Right.
get it. Good
Right.
good
Yeah.
thought.
It also said, there's a quote that says, if you don't build your culture, one will form on its own,
Yep.
and you might not like
Mm.
what you get.
Yeah.
And so if we're not intentionally creating the culture, one's going to be formed, and oftentimes you're going to dislike it or you're going to hate it. And then it's like there's a funny skit that I saw one time. This young man, high school student, he's in school, and they're like, man, they're eating lunch and y'all talking, and man, he opens his bag, man, peanut butter jelly sandwiches again, man. I hate peanut butter and jelly. Always peanut butter and jelly. And his friend's like, man, why don't you tell your mom to pack something else? And he goes, man, I pack my own lunches. What are you talking about? So he's frustrated. He's frustrated about the
He's doing
sandwich,
it.
but it's his.
That's
He's
funny.
packing his own lunch. He made it. He's complaining about it. What's good?
Oh
So,
my gosh. That's funny.
I mean, it's a hilarious story, by the
Yeah.
way. So kudos to you,
Yeah.
Jermaine. It's you made me laugh. Good job.
sorry.
But why are you apologizing? That was great.
Yeah,
But I think the point you're trying to make is how often did dads get frustrated about the culture of their home? They walk in the door, my house is a mess.
and
My
you're
kids are
sitting-
crazy.
You
Yeah.
made it.
What my kid's doing drugs. He got kicked out of school. What the heck? It's like, well, you're getting what you created. So if you have the opportunity to build it, we're contrasting two ideas. Accidentally, which it's kind of like flicking a coin in the air and hoping something happens, versus intentionally planning. All right, good thought. Number 3, put your family first. I think we're talking about prioritizing the right things in order. So like how do you guys as a dad evaluate whether you're putting your family first? And how do you check yourself when you're not? Like how do you know?
Why don't you answer that first?
My
So
question
you're asking
was
me
so
how I
good.
evaluate whether
Yeah.
or not I'm putting my family first. I would probably just say, am I spending time with them?
Yeah.
Like, again, I'm going
It's a great
fundamentally.
answer.
Am I spending more time with my friends than I am with my family or my wife?
Yeah.
Or my job.
Or my
Yeah.
job,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Am I spending more time? So for me, here's a good example. Like, I have to navigate, even like counseling appointments that I do, because I'm like, well, I can't have a counseling appointment at 6:00 because I need to be home with my family. So there's things, and at times I'll say yes, and there are extreme situations, but the normative, check for me is like, no. 5:00, like when I get off, ish, to, time they go to bed, I belong to them and they belong to me. Like we're going to structure our life so that we are together. That we my wife and I have actually spoken about this, especially when I was a youth pastor. I was like always taking out kids, or our family was younger, and I'm moving. She's taking girls out. I'm taking guys out. And we had a thought. We're like, hey, we're away from each other a good bit. Maybe we need to recalibrate and think about this. And so as we started having kids, we're like, all right, I'm not going to be gone. This is for us. I'm not saying anybody else, but for us, this is our establishment. I'm not going to be gone from my house more than 2 days a week.
It's great. You mean the evenings?
Oh, I'm
specifically.
yes. The evenings and bedtimes and things like that. Like, so we're trying to. So it's like, I have this happening at church at night. I got this. Well, that means I can't go out with the boys, one night. Or if I want to go out with the boy, there's a sacrifice. If I want to go with my friends,
Yep.
so there's a sacrifice. So
Yep.
that's how I would say, we have a practical strategy or agreement between my wife and I. Like, all right, you need to be home because y'all know me.
To
I like
just
to
to recap,
Yeah.
you're present in your home.
Yep.
majority of the time when your family's
yeah,
together,
honest,
right?
yes.
Like you're not the absentee dad.
Right.
No,
So you're
yeah,
there,
right.
but you're also consciously making decisions, not just to be there physically, but to be there mentally, emotionally, spiritually, right? You're present.
It sounds
and
like I'm doing an
active.
amazing job. Sometimes I come home and I'm like,
Yeah.
I need to take a
I'm
nap.
tired. Yeah.
I'm tired.
And I think like you're saying is guarding times and I guard times and days that are they're in my agenda. They're my calendar intentionally. I put them there. Like we're doing this year calendar thing. We're doing Google. My wife and I are sharing it, and we're looking at everything. And I'm trying to be intentional on like making sure that I'm giving my wife time. I'm making sure that I'm giving my kids time, and we're looking at it together intentionally, even more intentionally, because you can grow in this more intentionally. Because as your kids, as they grow, we can think they need less time, and in fact, it can be the opposite. I mean, they may not say they need more time, but I'm watching my daughter change. I'm watching my son change, and I'm creating conversations with them as they walk and navigate those changes, right, and how they process them. And so not to micromanage them, but just to engage more with them, to help them find the words to match their feelings, so they can convey what's going on. And so we intentionally, like I said, there are times where I'm hours in the day that I guard, and then there are days that we have a Sabbath day that it's guarded. It's like, hey, and let's say I have an event. Let's say I have to be here on that Sabbath day. We will make it a different day. We're not a stickler. Well, it has to be on Saturday, or it has to be. Sometimes life just happens, and I got to go to work or other business.
Funerals, like what we do in our field. There are times we can't
Unexpected.
be home. Right.
Yeah.
Hospital visits.
And then we let our kids be involved in helping us plan those days.
Right.
So there are times where it's like, okay, what do you guys want to do? And they're like, oh. And then they're planning and they're thinking about what they want to do, and they look forward. So we're together as a family planning. This day we're going to go to the zoo, or this day we're going to go to the water park, or say, et cetera. So
yeah, absolutely. I think I've heard this from you. You said to your kids, love is spelled Time. So if you were to ask your kids, how do I know my dad puts my family first? They probably won't say, well, he pays the water bill.
Right.
He buys groceries. We have a house to live in.
My father
They're going to
was so
say,
great.
they're going to say, my dad was there.
Yeah.
He cared. He was in my life.
Yeah.
So what we talk about, and I just love this conversation, is how do we put our family first? We spend time with them.
That's what
we're
your
not
daughter
absent.
said.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're not absent. We're not distant. We're not just the money bank. We are the leader of our home in every sense. So I think that's a really good one.
But then financially, if I could just lean into that for a second.
Lean in.
If you're putting more money into your hobbies,
Your boat.
and you won't take your daughter out to, this is an extreme, you got more money in your boat, let's say, and you don't take your daughter out on dates. Like, your money is not a reflection of your desire for that family that you want to create. So get your money involved too.
Money where your mouth is.
Yeah, put your money where your heart is. Like,
Yeah.
if you say you value that, like, spend money on your kids. I'm not saying give them everything that they want. They'd have to have the newest iPad, iPhone. Like, don't do that. Like, but maybe surprise them and buy them a toy, Legos, buy them a doll, buy them a dress,
or do a
Yeah.
great vacation as opposed to like a hobby,
Yeah.
right? Like if
Yeah.
you had to pick, there's going to be, I think the thing that always helps me frame this conversation is there will be a time where my kids aren't in the home where I have extra money to spend on things I want to do. But there's only a limited amount of time that they'll be with me at this age and want to do those things with me. The older your kids get, the more it is harder to coordinate schedules, get everyone on the same page, go on a family vacation. Right now is the best time to make memories, and those are things that'll last with your kids. So I think there's a great thing to frame this. I think there's lots to evaluate. All right, number 4, the goal isn't control, it's relationship. I think there's when I think about this, there's kind of like 2 trains of thought. There is the free range parenting, which is the extreme of my kids don't need a parent, they need a friend. I'm going to let them kind of just do their thing, and I'm going to be here as a friend and a guide to encourage them, but I don't want to constrain them. Right? That's one. And then the other one is I am a military dad and they're in boot camp, and I am going to at a micro level control everything they do, and that's how I know I'm a good dad. So one extreme is I'm a good dad if I let them do what they want, or I'm a good dad if they do everything I tell them. Both of those are bad examples. So when I say the goal isn't control, it's a relationship. What does that mean?
I mean, I think, we're not raising up our kids.
I'm sorry.
We're not raising up our kids to control them. We didn't have kids with the idea, you know what, I'm going to have these tiny humans and I'm going to control everything they do. If you did, you have a problem. Okay. That's not why we did it. But we think about the joy of fathering. We think about the feelings, the relationship, the development, right? The process, right? But somehow I think we can lose that with all that we do as fathers and husbands. I think we can lose, in the work of fathering, you know what I mean? In doing the work, we can lose the joy in the work. There's a joy in it. And I think we must remember, like, with this in mind, it isn't about control. It's about relationship. I want to have a relationship with my kids. And so I think the balance is, it's us taking the time to remember, why did we have kids in the first place? I saw this meme, and it was like, yeah, I had kids because I had 4 or 5 kids. I wanted to buy a bigger vehicle. I wanted to eat a dozen eggs and, one day.
I wanted to do more laundry.
Yeah, I want to do more laundry. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wanted to have holes in my walls and stuff on the,
When I think of goal, again, I'm a sports guy. I like sports, but I think of how do you score a point? Okay, that's the goal. In football, you know where it is. You know where the end zone is. You got to get there. Basketball, you got to get the ball into the hoop. Baseball, right? Your runner has to touch home plate. He's got to go around and touch home plate. Okay, soccer, goal, like kick the ball through. It's a goal. Yeah. So the win. When I hear this phrase, the goal, the win isn't control. The win is relationship. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I think the point is that the win is not controlling your kids, because you know what happens then. You're always going to have to control them. Like, you'll always how are they going to be successful at life if you're no longer able to control them? Without a doubt, at some point, like, we have absolute authority over our kids, their infants.
But authority and control are different, right?
Yes, I could see a couple of different, like, in a certain sense, like, I'm going to control where my kids go right now. I'm going to control a lot in authority. I could see a world where there's like a blending of the two. My point is whether you want to talk about authority or control. Right now, I'm controlling where my kids go. I control what they can and can't watch. Now, what I'm saying is, as they get older, I'm releasing that for them. I'm not telling my kids, what to wear. Like, even my 3-year-old, at times, my wife will do that. But at times, honestly, my daughters will literally go pick out his clothes. Like, they're being raised, they're taking authority over a certain thing. They're taking responsibility. And so what I'm saying about control is that I'm going to release the control to them. I want to raise them in a relationship, and I want them to come back like, hey, what do you think about this? And I'm hearing that from my kids even now, and they're asking me about decisions, the things that are happening in their own little lives. So I guess when I'm looking at control, not in a quote negative sense, but like, hey, I'm protecting you because I'm controlling you, not letting you put your hand on the fire. And at some point, I got to be like, hey, if you're going to touch it, it's going to hurt. Good luck. Yeah. But anyway, so that's the way I was kind of looking at it.
Your kid is a person.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
A person has the same values, whether they're a kid or an adult. It's, I need to be loved. I need to be respected. I need to be valued. I need some level of autonomy. And I think some parents think, well, I don't see you as a person. I see you as an object, an extension of me, and what you do is a reflection of me. So they parent more out of their own reputation, how people see them, versus considering that as a person with needs and values and wants that are just as important as my own. And what ends up happening when there's a high level of control in a relationship, that no matter who you are, no matter if, you're like the most type A, controlling, authoritarian parent in the world, your kids will not be around you 24/7. And the more control you exert, the more rebellion you're going to bring forth in your kid, because what's going to happen is every human being needs some level of freedom. They're going to push back on you, and they're going to get out of your chokehold environment, and they're going to go crazy. And we see this happen often. I mean, we've seen it happen often in people that we know.
Yeah, there's an appropriate level of release. Like you should not be you should not be spoon feeding your 10-year-old kid. Like, I'm sorry, I've seen that. Like, don't do that. Like,
but even maybe, I mean, a similar extreme example, but maybe not as like hyperbolic, because maybe you know people like that. I don't, but
yeah,
you know, like oh, you do, okay, crazy, okay. So there's one. Obviously, don't do that. But
Yeah.
I think like examples where parents are like out of fear controlling everything in their kids' world, right? Like they're the parents that are like really involved in the school, watching their kids in the classroom, like helicopter parenting over the teacher and the principals and the sports teams, and like they're so involved, their kid doesn't have the freedom to make mistakes, doesn't have the freedom to explore, doesn't have the freedom to fail, because that parent's always there like that. And I think for me, the reason why this is so important is because I know my kids won't be kids forever. I know they're not going to live with me forever. I know at some point they're going to make up their own mind how they feel about certain things. And at some point, I'm not going to be able to control them. And I don't want to, right? Like, I don't want to control my 25-year-old daughters. Like, that's not my goal. Hey, here's the car you should buy. Here's the house you should live in. Here's the city you should live in. Here's a job you should work. I don't want that. What I want is a relationship where they call me on the phone and say, hey, Dad, I'm struggling through this. What do you think I should do? They've invited me in because of a relationship, as opposed to me forcing my will on them to the point where like, I don't want anything to do with you because you don't allow me to think or breathe. And so, you know, I just think like, if I want that relationship with them down the road, I need to have that relationship with them now in an appropriate way. So like with my 9-year-old girls, when we go out on one-on-ones, we're hanging alone together, I'm asking them a lot of questions. What do you think about this? How do you feel about that? How should we handle this situation? Like, for example, I'm coaching my girls in basketball. I have a plan I want. Like, my daughter says, I want to be a point guard. All right, well, we're going to teach you how to be a point guard. But I think they were practicing, like, what do you think went well? What do you think we should work on? Like, give me your input. She doesn't know a whole lot, but I want her to feel empowered that this isn't a monologue where I'm telling you what to do. This is a dialogue where we're talking back and forth, and I value your input. I value your opinion. I value your feelings.
That's good.
And I want to hear from you.
Yeah.
And so my hope is that that's going to continue for the next 50, 60 years of my life, that we're going to continue to have those type of talks and conversations and relationships. So I think the question is, and how to evaluate this is, are your kids inviting you in? Do they want your input? Do you feel like they value you on a level where it's not just about do this, do that, do this, or it's, Dad, let's go do something. Let's go play together. Let's go have fun together. If that never happens in your relationship, then I would challenge you as a father, like, there's probably a disconnect where your kid only sees you as the police officer in the home that's always watching them to tell them the rules. Kids naturally want a relationship with their parents, but if the parent is always like thumbing them down, eventually that kid doesn't want anything to do with you because they see you as someone who's always looking for them to fail and pointing out their mistakes. So my encouragement is, prioritize relationships. Spend time with your kids where you don't have to tell them what to do. Enjoy them. Give them a chance to give input. And I think you'll be surprised at the dynamic change in your relationship. All right, last one. This one's heavy. Your voice becomes your kid's inner voice. And the way I've heard people talk about this, like psychologically, is everyone has self-talk, the way they talk to themselves in their head. Some people, because of the way they were talked to as a kid by their parents, essentially that's the same way they talk to themselves now. You know, as a kid, you know, their parents say, you're a loser, you're a joke, you're a failure, you always screw up, you always make mistakes. Why can't you be like your brother? Why can't you be different? Why do you always do this? What's wrong with you? So that kid's 25, 30 years old, makes a mistake. What's wrong with you? You're such a screw up. You're such an idiot. Why are you doing that? In the tone, it matches what their parents talk to them about as kids. And so obviously as parents, you get really frustrated at your kids. I mean, they frustrate the crap out of you sometimes, for sure. But, you know, it's very conscious. The way I talk to my kids consistently will become their inner voice. How does that hit you guys?
Yeah, I that's a heavy statement, and it's a reality that we all, I think, live in. I think everyone should have a concept of what it is that is being brought out. Like our language is actually revealing who we are. Jesus said, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth is speaking, especially in times of failure, of times when you're tired, when you're weak, when you're irritated. And so those are the times I think that we need to have a little bit more control or get out of a situation. Like if you're too angry, don't deal with something at that moment. Like if you're that mad and you can't even talk because you want to break something, like get out of the situation. Like it's going to be there in 20 minutes. Like deal with it then. So yeah, I read one time, or I read in a psychology class in a textbook that I had, that kids will at times act out what they think we think about them. Okay, so kids will act out what they think, their assumptions about your assumptions about them. So they're thinking, and how is that portrayed the most? Through language, the way we talk to them. Not even the quote, extreme vulgarities, or let's just say irritations, whatever it is. It could just be the normal makeup of your home. Like, have you noticed people who talk about their being afraid? Guess what? Their kids are afraid. Like my kids are not afraid of things. And guess what? It's because I'm not afraid of stuff, right? My kids are not afraid of animals. They go up to them. They're like wanting to go see alligators. I'm like, well, we're not going to go put our hands on. They're not going to go pet the alligator, right? They're not afraid of things because that's not a vibe that I'm giving off. I think that's what we're getting at. But we need to be conscious of what it is that we're reproducing in our kids. And I think, yes, what we're wanting you to know is the 5 things dad should know is just know that what is being said, communicating verbally or even non-verbally. If you look at them, if you don't even say anything, you just look at them with anger and you're just mad and you're just breathing heavy, all that stuff, that's communicating something. And like you're saying, Nathan, that's programming a certain words into them, and it's gonna mark them. So if you're gonna mark them in positive, upbuilding ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's humbling, it's sobering to hear your voice becomes your kid's inner voice, because I think our voice had an origin as well. It forces one to think back about, okay, what helped form my voice? How did my voice become what it is? How did my responses become what they are? How did my reactions become what they are? And it forces us to look within our own selves and realize sometimes a lot of the problem isn't our kid. The problem is me. The problem is us. It's how I'm processing my feelings regarding what they're doing, and really, it's oftentimes it's like, oh, I have an issue in my own heart. Does that make sense? Like, I was hurt here. I feel this way about me. I never experienced healing in this area of my own heart. And so, where did our voices come from? I think it might be good for parents and fathers take a deep dive and inventory. Is there unforgiveness in my heart towards my own family? Yeah. Were there wounds that occurred? Are there things I'm still carrying even now as an adult male, as a father, as a husband, in my current situation? And really taking the time, the steps to get healing.
I think that's really good. I think I've seen the illustration of a parent spewing out all these negative words, and literally those words being shaped into the image of a child. And so I think there's like a deep reality there that our words shape their lives. And so, to put a positive spin on this, because obviously we can see the negative. The positive is when my girls are older, I want them to hear my voice saying, you can do it. You can make it. Like, you got everything inside of you to overcome this. You are smart. You are capable. You are strong. You are courageous. That starts now. I mean, there's either the voice of encouragement or the voice of criticism that our kids hear from us. And so as parents, it's like, man, I think it says it takes 5 or 6 positive words to negate one negative word. I don't know if you guys have heard this before, but
or more.
Yeah, maybe more, maybe 10.
I think it was
but I think the point is, parents, we need to be conscious of what we're speaking, saying, believing over our kids. And then also, I think it's the way you talk to yourself is really important as a parent. Like, the way you talk about yourself is going to teach your kids how they should see and view themselves. So you need to have, like you talked about, you pass on either brokenness or health to your kids. So if you're if you're teaching and preaching brokenness over yourself, you're setting an example for your kids. Yeah. So be very conscious of the voice you're speaking to your kids' life, the words you're using over them. And if you failed in this area, today's a great day to change it. It's going to feel really weird, especially if you're not a very encouraging, positive person by nature. I can relate. I'm not naturally that way, but start speaking over your kids what you want to see in them, not what you see. Even if they're messing up and they're in a really problematic place and they're getting in trouble in school, start speaking over them the identity of who they are, right? That's what God does with us. Yep. God doesn't speak about what we did. He speaks about who we are. Like that's his ethos into his creation is God spoke, we became. And so in the same way, what we speak, they become. So speak over them what you want to see, not what you're seeing. And I think you'll see that shape that. So, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I would say to the father out there that you're like, man, I'm struggling with this, or I've struggled with this. We've all been there. But I was just thinking, start speaking over yourself, getting the word of God, looking at God's truth, and begin speaking over your own self. Maybe you need to take a step back from your own kids. It's like, and see yourself the way God sees you. Going and intentionally saying, I am fearfully and wonderfully made, Psalm 139. I'm his workmanship created in Christ Jesus for good works. Just speaking things over your own life. And I tell my kids when we speak affirmations, don't rush past them. Slow down. Think about what that means. The psalmist says, when I consider the heavens, the moon and the stars, the workmanship of your hands, and I think, who art man? What is man that you're mindful of him? I was watching the eclipse and I thought about that verse, like the world, the U.S., parts of the U.S. were standing watching this magnificent. We're all unified. We're all watching. We realize how small we are. And we're all amazed at that. People are crying. Reporters are crying. And in comparison to us, the psalmist is like, God's mindful of us.
More than anything
more than
creation.
all of that.
Yeah, all the beautiful things.
And so I think we have to, as fathers, as sons, we have to own that. We have to become that. Let it become a part of who we are. Hide that word in our heart. And from that place of speaking over our own selves, accepting that over our own lives, then we can speak. We can't speak lies over no matter how good it is, we can't speak lies over our children. We have to believe the truth that we're speaking over our children. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if I don't believe what I'm saying, and I haven't embraced that, then my kid's going to pick up on that. But if I'm as a son, have embraced sonship from the Father, I can then give that to my child.
Yeah. I would say, I would go back to the first one. Your example matters most. And if you were to look at these, your example matters most. You can't accidentally have a great family. Put your family first. The goal isn't control, but relationship. Your voice becomes your kid's inner voice. I think all of those flow out of the example, right? If you want your kids to think right and talk right, be an example of someone who thinks and talks right, right? Take control over the situation. Accidentally having a great family. Like, teach your kids, have an example for them to look back like, well, my dad did this. Yeah. And I think you said that in the beginning, Nathan, like about example, like we want to replicate who we are and who we are. It starts with us. Like, we have got to be the best version of ourselves. And It's impossible. We are Christians. We love Jesus. You cannot have ultimately what God wants for you apart from him. So come and submit your life, surrender your life to Jesus, get involved in a Bible-believing, good, godly church, and cultivate your life to where your life is a good example. Have the kind of mission of mind and heart to where your life should be seen even by outsiders as, man, I want to live like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jesus is our ultimate example.
Yep.
So every example needs an example. So maybe your father wasn't a good example.
That's good.
Maybe you haven't been a good example. We can look at Jesus and look at his example and model through faith in Christ. This is the example that I want to model. This is the example that I'm calling myself to. Maybe you're struggling with that. You're like, man, I fall short. I fall short. I'm like, I'm broken. I'm flawed. And I hear him and I look at his word. But I'm growing in my example. Yeah. We never arrive and I've arrived with the Father, with my kids. Everything's clean, peaches and rainbows. There's sometimes I fall on my face and I'm like, I blew it. Lord, I totally blew it. Forgive me. And I go repent to my kids. And I'm like, I'm following Christ's example, but I got in the flesh. This is how I felt when you did that. This hurt my feelings here. I've told my kids that. My feelings were hurt here. And they were like, we didn't know your feelings got hurt. And I'm like, yeah, you don't know that because I don't walk.
Yeah.
I can't go in my room and slam the door. But I think it's important that we as fathers, I'm learning, like, that hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
Or that frustrated me. That offended me when and they don't, but I can see them it helping them understand that I too am
the light on.
I'm a man. I can be hurt. It's like they can be hurt, and I don't want to hurt them, and I don't want to be hurt. So just being more open with my kids as well.
Yeah, so good. I think that's a great place to end, is find the example of God the Father as our example as fathers. Like, look at the way he treats humanity. Look at the way he sacrifices and loves his family. What a great example. Dad, you got this.
You got it.
Like, this is not impossible. You have the grace and empowerment of God, and you have brothers. And if you don't have brothers, find other men who are trying to do this well. Every time we talk, we encourage each other.
We do.
As dads. You need this too. So go kill it today. Love your family. Set the tone. Set the example in your home. And we will catch you on the next episode of Father Focus Podcast. Peace out.